Tonight, Communications Minister warns of shutdown of Digital Terrestrial Television platform that will terminate your TV signals.
The government says it cannot continue to pay for it. So if they do not pay for it, unfortunately, we may find ourselves in the situation where we cannot receive TV broadcast signals because the platform will be shut down.
More from the Communications Minister's question time in Parliament, where she categorically denied that government has sold its 30% stake in Vodafone.
Mr. Speaker, the government of Ghana has no plans of selling its 30% shareholding in Ghana Telecommunications Company Limited.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Vodafone. Communications Minister Esler Wusu-Ekufo is warning tonight that TV signals to your homes and offices will be cut from next year following a shutdown of the Digital Terrestrial Television platform. This will happen, the minister warns, because broadcasters, he alleges, are refusing to pay for its use. Well, she says government, which has been footing this particular bill, can no longer afford it. And this will have consequences next year.
None of the broadcasters on the DTT platform pay for using it as I speak. And this situation cannot continue in our current economic state. GIBA is not a broadcaster hosted on this platform. So I don't know in which capacity they would be acting. They have constituent members who are broadcasters on the DTT platform, but none of them have paid a peswa to date for being hosted on the platform. So it is not correct to state that any entity being hosted on the platform has paid for being hosted on it. They have not. There is actually matters pending in court because they have been notified that government has indicated that it cannot continue to pay for the operations and maintenance of this DTT platform. And so the users of the platform must pay for the services that they use. That notification has been sent to the broadcasters being hosted on the platform. Some of them are negotiating with the management of the DTT platform as to payment terms for it. Others are adamant that government should continue to pay. But my answer is clear. The government says it cannot continue to pay for it. So if they do not pay for it, unfortunately, we may find ourselves in the situation where we cannot receive TV broadcast signals because the platform will be shut down for non-payment of the operational expenses that it incurs. It is incurring. So I think it's incumbent on all of us to work together to ensure that this critical national information infrastructure stays operational.
Let's go to Parliament now. Of course, this will have consequences for everybody, considering that, as the minister warns, the platform will shut down, which means you will not get TV signals in your home. Kweku, this was triggered by a question.
Yes, Evans, this question stood in the name of Dr. Abednego Azuma Bandin, the MP for Bunkurugu, who wanted to ask the Minister for Communications the progress Ghana has made in terms of fully migrating from analog to digital terrestrial television. He was not excited at all with the responses the minister had given. And if you look at some of the arguments he put forth, he believes that the minister was not being necessarily candid with Parliament. Then came in Sam George, another member of the Communications Committee, who sought to clarify that this was such an important matter that could have such significant and severe ramifications for Ghana's economy. But the minister has doubled down, clearly insisting that if these private broadcasters mainly do not pay up early next year, the DTT platform will completely shut down, which will mean TV broadcast services will not go to the home of the many Ghanaians who rely on that.
And when she announced this possibility, this doomsday scenario of waking up one morning and all your television channels are off, what was the reaction on the floor?
If you look at in particular the person who asked the question, Dr. Abednego Azuma-Bandin, he really believed that this was such an important matter, and he believed the minister was not being especially very candid with the responses she gave. But perhaps the biggest response to the minister's comments came from Sam George, who is the deputy ranking member on the communications committee. So to suggest that the GIBA as an organization and the state also have some role to play in this, and that it will not be proper for the state to seek to put all this on the neck of private broadcasters mainly around the country who rely on this service to operate and to also go to the homes of so many Ghanaians who rely on the DTT, especially now that the analog system has completely failed out. The minister, in some part of her response, stated that only 3 channels are still maintaining analog masts across the country, which means a significant majority of Ghanaian broadcasters rely on the DTT. If that were to shut down, that will have significant concerns for these operators and so many Ghanaians.
And then also this controversial subject of whether or not the government has sold a stake in Vodafone. She clarifies this.
Yes, over the last few weeks, Hannah Ibrisi in particular has been raising a lot of questions about an alleged sale of government 30% stake in Vodafone. Today, the minister came to the floor to answer a question in the name of Roxy Nelson Lafiamepo. The minister was categorical that government has not sold, has not thought about selling its 30% stake in Vodafone, and that indeed it is the majority stakeholder, Vodafone, that has sold its 70% stake to Telecel, and that process was still going on. And then as far as government is continued, there was no plan to sell.
Mr. Speaker, the government of Ghana has no plans of selling its 30% shareholding in Ghana Telecommunications Company Limited. Vodafone Ghana, which holds 70%, has transferred its stake to the Telecel Group in February 2023. Under the shareholders' agreement, the consent of the minority shareholder is not required for Vodafone Ghana to transfer or to sell its shareholding in Ghana Telecommunications Company Limited. Consent is not required under the terms of the shareholders' agreement.
I want to bring in now Cecil Sunkwa Mills, is the president of the GIBA, that's the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association. Also joining me is Samuel George, who is the deputy ranking member on the communications committee. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Mr. Sunkwa Mills, so the minister gave this very ominous warning. Next year, the DTT platform will be shut down. Our signals will go off because broadcasters aren't paying. Is that the case, that we aren't paying? It says now a notice have been sent to members that if you do not pay, you're going off next year.
Thank you, Evans, and good evening to your listeners. Sorry, can you hear me clearly?
Loud and clear, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. I've gone through the video of the statement, and I find it a bit unfortunate in terms of the direction, because if you would remember, GIBA has announced on a number of platforms that we need to have the migration process completed. Now, what has happened is that GIBA has been involved in the DTT program since inception. We have been a key part of it, even more than just being a stakeholder. Now, as we speak, a couple of months ago, there was an issue about fees, and there were 2 different dimensions. One was a fee from studio to the head end, that is where they broadcast, and then one is national broadcast. And in this discussion, the long and short of it was about using the right process of determining fees for such platforms. Let's remember that the DTT platform is a government platform, it's a single platform, so it is a monopolistic platform, and therefore the fixing of fees or rates must go according to the Rates and Fees Act, which has been passed, and it is run by a committee which sits on the finance and made up of various memberships. Now, unfortunately, the minister went ahead after we had a discussion with the select committee on this issue of arbitrary fees, because the minister did propose fees in a discussion which we were deliberately not invited, because she said we are not broadcasters, even though we know we are stakeholders and we are mandated to represent our members. Now, what happened at that event was that we, with the select committee present, we actually made it clear that there was a need for a clear procedure and transparent and fair, so we could decide on fees. At no stage has any broadcaster refused to pay any fees. It was part of the policy of building the platform, and nobody carries stations. We know every station knows that to distribute your content, it comes at a cost. So there's been no time that any broadcast station is refusing to pay. So after this conversation, the minister sent out invoices from the ministry to stations requesting them to pay a certain fee per month.
How much was this?
Well, initially in the conversation that we were not giving, the fee was proposed at $15,000 a month.
$15,000 a month per station.
And at a meeting where some of our members were, they asked the question that how do you even come up? How did you come up with the figure? What made up $15,000 a month? Because remember that these stations also distribute channels on other platforms. So they told us to come back with us with a breakdown of how this they came out. But she said that they had done a consideration and they were looking at $10,000 a month.
So that's a reduction from the 15 to 10.
Yeah, that was, And for us, the point is that you cannot allot fees on a national platform where people use arbitrary. And as a minister, the minister does not have that legal right to be giving fees for such a platform. And this is the point we raised. After the meeting, the minister sent out invoices to stations, and then we consulted the court for a clear interpretation of what this meant. That can the minister do as she is saying or not? As it is now, we're in court, waiting for that outcome and explanation.
But the bill on the table...
And I don't think that should be a reason for that conclusion which has been delivered. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, while this case is in court, the bill on the table is for broadcasters, each broadcasting house to pay $10,000 a month.
Well, that is what the invoice said.
That's what the invoice says.
The other thing is, and I think we'll come to that, is to manage the platform. We have not yet seen valid final policy for digital migration in Ghana, because the last policy that came out, Giba went to court, and part of the policy was expunged by the court as it became null and void, because they had wanted to use encryption to convert the whole DTT platform to a pay TV platform. And Giba said no. According to the constitution, this cannot be done, and we went for a legal interpretation, and the court sided with us. So that policy is not valid anymore. We need a refreshed policy. And even as I speak today, we do not have a refreshed policy. So how are we getting to do digital migration without a valid policy? And to the point where we are now pushing fees that have also not come from the Fees and Rates Act. The committee has not decided. And then you're going to shut down stations. I think something is not going the right way.
Stay with me.
Giba is ready to assist in any way to make sure that we migrate as early as possible, because that is our dividend, and that is what we use to reach the people for everybody. And so we would want to see it successful.
I mean, please stay with me, Mr. Sunkwa Mills. I want to bring in Sam George. He is the deputy ranking on the Communications Committee. Mr. George, the invoice that we've just heard about, $10,000 to each station, has that come to Parliament's attention at all? Have you considered?
Well, good evening to you and your. The point must be made that this whole thing about a charge is a long-standing principle from the days of Omaniboama, when the DTT platform was built in 2015. There's always been an understanding that the DTT platform is not for free, and that there will be a fee to be paid. The issue at stake now is the processes by which the fee is being determined. We as a committee have invited the ministry, we've invited GIBA. The ministry and GIBA need to come to a place where they have an understanding that it is not possible to proceed without one or the other, and that this matter will have to be discussed and agreed on, not litigated on. That's a point I need to make. Now, the ministry has originally determined a fee of $15,000 per station, which I personally believe is on the high side. Even though the DTT may appear to be a monopoly, as Mr. Sunkwa Mills put it out, there are other platforms, DTH platforms in the country, and there's a fair understanding or fair appreciation of how much those platforms charge the same TV stations for distributing their content. It's in the region of about $7,500. I hold the view that that would be a fair place to start off the conversation with GIBA's members. And even if GIBA were to be the umbrella body seeking audience with the ministry would have to engage GIBA. We've always engaged GIBA from the days of Omani Boama. And even under this minister, I've had instances where she's engaged GIBA as an umbrella body for the broadcasters. And so I think that the ministry itself must look at this position of saying that GIBA is not a broadcaster. Everybody knows GIBA is not a broadcaster. But GIBA holds a certain position in this whole conversation as the umbrella body of broadcasters. Except a station writes to the ministry and says that they don't want to be represented by GIBA, I believe that we need to give GIBA audience as a representative of the station. But on its own, must also bear in mind that this freebie, for want of a better phrase, which should have started in 2015, President Mahama gave a 2-year moratorium and has been extended since 2015. We're in 2023 now. Would have to come to a place where we all agree that something must be done in terms of payment by the broadcasters for the distribution fee. Same must be looked at for contribution link and all. That's a different conversation that we've also had with GIBA. But I believe that we need to have this position and say there is a management body that ought to have been set up, a management company for the DTT that should be there, and that body should determine the fee. The fee should be brought to Parliament, and Parliament will approve the fee as part of the Fees and Charges Act, which we do most times in November, December, along with appropriation, so that we approve the fees and charges to be charged, and then they can proceed to charge those fees. This invoice that Sunkwa Mills talks about has not been approved by Parliament. Well, as far as I'm aware, Parliament has not approved any 10,000 figure for distribution fee. So that in itself would not be a legal position by the ministry to take.
And Mr. Sunkwa Mills, you say obviously that $10,000 is too much. Sam George says this has to be paid for, and the conversation should be about how much should it be, collectively decided by yourselves and the ministry and government and other stakeholders. If it's not $10,000, how much is it? Have you made a counter proposal?
What we ask before you make a counter proposal on a specific figure, like any business, because remember, like I told you, that broadcasters also do their own distribution. Now, there are different platforms that different people use. There's a range, and terrestrial may be different from the cost of satellite. So based on that, that's why the broadcasters asked that what was the basis that they come up with this figure. Then we can do a comparative. We know some distribution can go as low as $4,000. But you see, for a national platform, if you want to use a national platform to also do distribution and to support the industry, in some countries it is even further rebated. But we haven't even had these discussions. So, we are open, and I think Honorable Sam George has said it, and he knows that GIBA is always open. We're very fair, but we're very firm, and to make sure that the media survives. Let's remember that with the fees of distribution, if it's exorbitant, it's another way that you can kill media. Because we know the situation in the media with some stations in terms of even financial sustainability.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the $10,000, and if you do a cursory, conversion of that, you're talking about 120,000 CDs a month. That you can guarantee will kill a lot of broadcast houses in this country.
So, Evans, I don't want to take the wind out of any sail and use this platform as a basis for discussion. We should sit around the table. They should create a proper management body for the DTT platform. That's also another issue that is pending. And I think we've lost so many years not just putting these structures together. And now we get to the point where we're going to switch off stations. I don't think it is right.
But let's address that. Let's address that. The minister, nonetheless, has told Parliament today in categorical terms, and next year they're shutting down the platform. And she says that this notices have already been sent to your members. Have you received that notice?
Is it a notice of a shutdown or a notice of an invoice? We're not clear.
Okay. Well,
I don't know
what notice can you confirm your members received?
If I know they received invoices, because if a member received a notice for a shutdown, that will definitely come to our notice. There's a separate case of a station which has been shut down because of a fee, but it's a slightly different issue. And it's also one of the reasons why we are in court.
But now you have the notice. It's been set on the floor of Parliament, the House of Records. That puts you on notice formally. What's the approach going to be from tonight?
Well, we wait and see. We have not seen any notices. If we do see a notice, we'll see. Maybe it may not be a notice. Maybe it will be an invitation for a conversation. And let's hope that next year runs till December.
Sam George.
Evans, let me be fair to the minister. If I heard her right on the floor of the House, she did not serve notice of the close down of TV stations, in all fairness to the minister. What I heard her say was that if we did not get to a place where people were going to pay, broadcasters were going to pay for distribution, given the current economic status of our country, government cannot continue to bear the bill, which so far has come to about $62 million. And so if we were not able to get broadcasters to pay, then the DTT itself, the infrastructure itself, will have to shut down. And if that infrastructure shuts down, then it means there'll be no broadcast. Because don't forget that the DTT is infrastructure that has been built, but the distribution is through a service of a third party, which we have to pay for, which government pays for. And that, the minister told us today, has come to some $62 million already. That's not a bill that we can continue to, government should continue to shoulder. And so the point here is we need to prevent the DTT infrastructure from shutting down because of payments to its third party. How do we do that? It's either government continues to underwrite the bill or broadcasters begin to pay the fees for the infrastructure. And so I think that what we need to do to avoid a shutdown is for us to get an agreement on what is it that is going to be the payment to the DTT infrastructure by the broadcasters. Let's reach an agreement on that. And let's get that sorted out. Let's get an arrangement. If we agree on what the fee is, once we are able to agree on what the fee is, once we are able to agree on what the fee is as a country and say that this is what broadcasters should pay, it would then be easy for us to say we are keeping the DTT active and broadcasters can continue to broadcast. That's really what we need to look at. but I'm not sure that I heard the minister say she was issuing a deadline for shutting down broadcasters or anything. That, in all fairness to the minister.
And Mr. Sunkwamil, since the case is in court, the minister obviously indicates that some payment needs to come in, and that if the payment does not come in, platforms will go off. Doesn't that case that is in court currently make it difficult to reach a settlement? And some judge has said this shouldn't be pursued through litigation. Just get a settlement on this, some agreement on this, and make the payments.
Well, I guess if some engagement would have been going on and stations are not being threatened with invoices, we probably would not also be in court. But based on the situation, we needed interpretation. And I think we've been in court for a number of months. So let's see what turns out from the court. And I think we all know the impact of when an issue is in court, the things you can do and what you cannot do. So I think we'll see how it evolves, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, I'm grateful. Thank you very much. That's Cecil Sunkwamil. He is the president of the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association. Sam George is the deputy ranking member, communications policy. Some payments will have to come in, or as the minister warns, the platform, the DTT platform will shut down. And that would mean that your signals, your television signals to your homes will not come through. What's your take on this? 055-1111-997. News 90 in a minute.
Merry Christmas!